not Samaki.
I got a shofar. It's missing.
It's good. I need to break Kufam with Ches. Who's Yudeya?
Yeah, Reish Lamed Daled.
Great.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
Is the tour? What was the shofar?
She's the Rav Shlita, Yedidi. She's all the chashuv, the people that must participate every week in the Daf Yomi, especially tonight, to be covered to be part of this Sugyos Daf Yomi, doing it for many years. Start off with the Rambam. Rambam Perek Yud Beis. Kol Nedarim Bashvuos have Meifer b'Yom Shammai. All Nedarim that his daughter makes, the father can be Meifer b'Yom Shammai. Shenem Kol Nedarim V'Asareh is medayik the pasuk Kol Nedarim V'Asareh. Aval HaBa'al ein yochel lahofer ela Kol Nedarim Bashvuos sheish b'hem inu nefesh or shebein dvarim lebein noah. The Baal can only be made for those Nedarim that give inu nefesh or shebein dvarim lebein noah, that stir the marriage. She won't look good, or she'll discashet, she'll never be nish leisha. And they ask on the Rambam, and that's why other Rishonim argue on the Rambam. The Sifri brings a hekish, ein li el Baal. How do you know ein li el Baal she'em meifel nedarim shebein al lebein noah, nedarim sheish b'hem nefesh? Ha'av minayin haridon. The Mar makes a hekish. Just like the Baal can only be made for Nedarim Shebein Lebein Noah and Nedarim Sheish B'hem Nefesh, so also the Av. And l'chorah like the Rambam, this would be shver, because l'chorah according to the Rambam, the father can be made for all the Nedarim. He has a greater power than the Baal. That's one problem. Then there's another shita, the shita of the Tur brings B'Shem Rabbeinu Yechiel. The Rambam holds that shita that once, we're learning this whole week the din of Nesroikna. Meis HaBa'al Nesroikna Rishus La'av. There's an oris and a father that are shutfim and being made from the Dorim. What happens if the oris dies? Then is Nesroikna Rishus La'av. Meis HaAv, the father dies, then the Baal, the oris can't be made for by himself. Meis HaBa'al Nesroikna Rishus La'av. Meis HaBa'al is Nesroikna Rishus La'av. Zeh yof koyach av mikoyach habal, dover echad yof koyach habal mikoyach av. Shehabal meifer b'bager, Baal can be meifer when she's a bogus, but av ain't a meifer b'bager. But the father has a mailah that the father is the din of nesroikna, and some learn because the Rishonim say that the oris is only a sniff to the av is the major meifer. Is the Rambam Paskins when it's nesroikna, he goes back to the previous din. And he's able to be made for all Nedarim. The Rambam Paskins, even though the Rambam Shita is that when the Av is made for before she gets married, before she becomes an HaRav, she can be made for all Nedarim across the board. Not only Bein Ola Bein Noah and Inu Nefesh, but he can be made for all Nedarim. So the Av can be made for all the Nedarim. So, but when he becomes Arusa, when she becomes an Arusa, then it has to be B'shutvis, because he has a Shutif. And he doesn't have to complete, it's not in Ganzen B'shusay. The Gemara says, Kedushin, it's Yotzim Mixas B'shusay. So therefore, he can only be made from the Nedarim Shebein Ola Bein Noah and the Nedarim She'inu Nefesh. Even though L'chayra, the Baal can't be made for those Nedarim, so on the Shar Nedarim, he should be able to be made for, because in that he has no Shutif. But the Pshat is that she went out B'mixas B'shusay. That means not totally b'shasav. So even the Shar Nedarim, which the oris can be made for, the Baal also can be made for. But the Rambam Shita is, what happens when the Baal dies? You go back to before. He can be made for all the Nedarim. Das steht on the Rambam, Befurish, in Perek Yud Aleph. Rambam Paskins, Meisa oris chazur l'shus aviyah. I want to quote the Rambam. And whatever he was able to be mefer, he's mefer like he was kaidem shetisara. So just like the Rambam holds, before she became an arusa, he can be mefer all nedarim, not only beina lebeina and inu nefesh. So also afterwards he can be mefer all nedarim. The only time he can't is when he has a shutif the oris. And that the Rabbeinu Yechiel argues, and the Tur brings B'Shem the Rabbeinu Yechiel, that even though he agrees to the Rambam, that before she got married, before she became an arusa, the father could be made for all nedarim, that he agrees to the Rambam. But in this he disagrees. He says once she became an arusa, and we're only able to be made for nedarim shebeino lebeino and inu nefesh because she had a shutif. So therefore, if the the oris dies, that it's nesroikel neshus av, he only can do the nedarim shebeino lebeino v'inu nefesh. That means even though he's agreeable to the Rambam that Kol's man, that she was a pnuya, the father could be made for all nedarim across the board, not only beino lebeino and inu nefesh, but since when he's an oris, he loses that power. So when the oris dies, he only can be made for those nedarim shebeino lebeino v'inu nefesh. As I state on Rabbeinu Yechiel, and the Beis Yosef says, "Mashkos Rabbeinu B'Shem Yechiel lechalik ben kodim shesar shalach shesar." Why is he coming to say this? Because be'emes there's a difficulty. There's a Gemara. The Rambam is coming with a Gemara. Gemara you learned this week in the daf. Gemara says, the Mishnah later, when it deals with Nisroikna, Mishnah is in Dafayin, Meisa Av loy Nisroikna Rishus L'Baal, Meisa Baal Nisroikna Rishus L'Av. So the Gemara says, my Tama, where do we know Nisroikna? The Omakrov and Ureh Beis Aviyah. Meisa Baal Nisroikna Rishus Av Menolon. How do we know the din of Nisroikna? That if it's Meisa Baal, the father can retain his old, he can be made for alone. Omarabed Omakrov Im Hoya Sil Ishn Dora Leo. So Gemara makes a hekish. Makish koid me avaya shniyah lekoid me avaya rishon. The makish before you get married the second time, the first oris died. So the makish koid me avaya shniyah lekoid me avaya rishon. So the Rambam that held that before havaya rishona, before she got married, she can be made for all nedarim. So the makish that before she gets married a second time, right now again she's single, he can be made for all nedarim. And this is problematic on the Rabbeinu Yechiel, what he does with this hekish. And that's the Goyen Yisr on the Rabbeinu Yechiel. But as I halt the Rabbeinu Yechiel, where's the Rabbeinu Yechiel coming from? Rabbeinu Yechiel is coming from the Gemara and Daf Samach Ches and the Ran, first daf that you learned this week. So he brings the Sifri, Ein li al Baal, Shein Mefer al Adorm Shebein al Beino, and Adorm Sheish Minu Nefesh, Ha'ab Menayin, Haretidon. The Gemara says, Ein lo achuk menish lish bein lish l'bitoi, at the makish za'av l'baal. The Sifri and Yushalmi make a hekish, the makish av l'baal. Ma baal ein mefer al advorm shebein al beino, and the dorm sheish minu nefesh, ha'av can only be mefer. So they make the Sifri, and l'chore makes a hekish, just like the av, the baal can only be made from the dorm shebein al beino. So also the av can only be made from the dorm shebein al beino v'inu nefesh. So therefore he has a sifri that the father can only be made from the dorm shebein al beino v'inu nefesh. At least he's saying that applies to even after the erisin. You can only be made from the dorm shebein al beino. He's coming from that sifri. You have to know what he does with the other kasha. That's the goyin's kasha. The makish koid me avaya rishon le koid me avaya shniyah. The Rambam l'chorah have to say the Sifri is going before.
Sifri's talking about Achamisa?
Yeah, that's so l'chorah the Rambam learned is talking. Yeah, he's talking before when she was single, when she was on Arusa. The Rambam had to learn that the Sifri is going. It's telling us that just like the Baal can only be made for Nedarim Shebein Al Beino V'inu Nefesh, so also the Av can only be made for those Nedarim Shebein Al Beino V'inu Nefesh. The Av is Hekesh. So the Rambam learned that only applies when she's still married, when she's on Arusa, but afterwards not. But the Rabbeinu Yechiel was forced to say that this is talking even after what Shlomo was ma'ira before, this talking even after the Eretz. And I think the pshat is because you don't need, that was the Dava Poshet. The Rambam held it's not a Dava Poshet. That even though the father can be made for all Nedarim, he has no restriction before she's married. But after she's married, the Rabbeinu Yechiel held that's Poshet. that since it's not in ganzen b'shus ha'av, she's not completely b'shus ha'av, so therefore you can't even make for the Shiur Adorim. You don't need a sifri for that. You don't need a hekesh for that.
He has a shutuf.
You don't need a hekesh yet, because it's not only, even though in the Shiur Adorim he has no shutuf, right? But in the reshus it's not completely, and the daughter is not completely, there's a shtickle yitzir. The Gemara says yotza b'shus ha'av. So therefore, he had to learn that the Sifri is going after the Erusin. The Hekesh is after the Erusin. Mashiach the Rambam Vaistais learn not like that I need the Sifri for that also. Because without the Sifri, maybe to have a Havamina, on the Shiur Adorim that he has no Shutif, that he can do himself even after the Erusin. But that's the Machlokes, the Rabbeinu Yechiel, and the Rambam. That means really there's three shittas here. There's some shittas that the father never can be made for Nedorim, Shiur Adorim, only Bein Ola, Bein Ovi, and Nefesh. The Rambam Shita is that it can be made for all Nedorim, say before the Erusin, say after the Oris dies, and the only time he can only be made for the Nedorim Shebein Ola Bein Ola is when he has the Shutif while she's married, and the Rabbeinu Yechiel holds while she's married, since while she's married he can only be made for Nedorim Shebein Ola Bein Ola, so after she's married, the same thing. L'chorah, the Shaila is totally in what the Geder of Nesroikna is. What is the Geder of Nesroikna? What is the Pshat Nesroikna? It's not a real Yerusha. The Shaila is Nesroikna, till now there was Shutvim. The Oris and the father was Shutvim. Now the Oris was Mace. So it says the Oris, the Baal Av takes over the Oris's position. Because remember, especially if you learn the Av was the Ikka, that's why only on the father takes over. The Baal, if the Av dies, the Oris doesn't take it over, it can't be Meifa. But now that he becomes back like before. So the Rambam learns he's mamish like before. Just like before he can do all Nedorim, now also he can do all Nedorim. What did the Rabbeinu Yechiel hold? So the Beis Yosef is Mazba, that since he's getting over the Reshus from the Oris, he's getting over from the Reshus from the Oris, it's ain't a bedin that he should be able to be made for Nedorim while she was still on Arusa, he was only able to be made for the Nedorim Shebein Ola Bein Ola, because he's a Shutif with the Oris. So now he's yarshening, let's call it Yerusha. He's getting over the Baal Schus on the other half, but the Baal can only be made for the Nedorim Shebein Ola Bein Ola. So therefore, Rabbeinu Yechiel held that the Geder of the Nesroikna is he's taking over the Koyach HaFara of the Baal. That's what he's getting over. And be about the Koyach HaFara of the Baal. The Baal's ability, the Oris's ability to be made for is only in the Nedorim Shebein Ola Bein Ola in the Nefesh. So therefore, he can't be made for only those Nedorim, because even though he has a right to be made for all Nedorim, but to be made for, in order to be made for, he had an Oris, he had a Shutif, and the Shutif died, and he takes over the Chelik HaShutif, he takes over the Koyach of the Shutif, so he can't be better than the Shutif.
But you had a pasuk, you know.
Yeah, I don't know what he does. I don't know what he does with that Makish Abai Koydim Abai Rishon Koydim Abai Shnia. But I see he learned the pasuk only that it can be made for alone. That's what he used the pasuk for. So he's up in Zog. The Makish Koydim Abai Shnia Koydim Abai Rishon. The Gemara uses that for a limit for Nesroikna. Without Nesroikna, maybe I would say that he can't. He has the partner's gone. He can't be made for. On that it says Makish Koydim Abai Rishon Koydim Abai Shnia. That's the pasuk in Nesroikna. That just like before the Oris was around, he was made for by himself. Afterwards, he's also made for himself. For that alone, you need a pasuk. I would think maybe he can't be made for. But the Rabbeinu Yechiel is learning that the pshat is he can't be made for more than the Oris did before. What's the Rambam gelernt? Chabay says the pasuk. The Rambam held not like that. The Rambam held Kol's money as a shooter. There was something staring him. There was something in his way. Now that the Shuta was nifta, his reshus is nispashet. Not that he takes over the koyach hafora of the Baal of the Oris, which was only on Bein Ola Bein Ola. No, his reshus now expands that he has the entire. It's not just like we're saying by Eris it was yotzim reshus. So now it's back in his reshus. It's back in his reshus. So therefore now he can be made for all the dorm like she was a pnuya. It's back in his reshus. His reshus expanded now that he doesn't have the shutif. The mainly just like before, it can be made for all the dorm.
So it's not the Nesroikna. The Lashon Nesroikna.
Yeah, that's the Nesroikna. Takes over that the Nesroikna. That's the Lashon Nesroikna. The Nesroikna means goes back to him. The Nesroikna is like before. So nochmal the Machlokes the Rambam and the Ben Yechiel is totally in this shaila, that the Rambam held that the din of the Sroikna is that his Rishus expands, not that he's taking over the power of the Oris. So therefore, if his Rishus expands, now it's totally Rishus, so he can be made for on the door. Masha Enkein, the Rabbeinu Yechiel held that not that his Rishus expands. No, he's taking over the Koyach Afora to Yerushi. He's taking over the Koyach Afora of the Oris. And since the Afora is limited to the Dom Shebein Ola Beino, so he only can be made for the Dom Shebein Ola Beino, because he needs that Shutfis. He's taking over. It's like he's taking over the Oris. He's been becoming the Oris. L'chayra, we see that this Rambam is going to answer Rashbi's kasha. The Rashba, so the Lir Shabbos is daf. Yesh afora achafora, ein afora achafora. So the Gemara says in the Mishnah, Hofer Av le Hofer Abal, Hofer Abal le Hofer Av, ein mufa. They both have to be meifa. Ein soch loy meshkaim echadem. Ein soch loy, if one of them was mekayim the nether, the other one can be meifa. So the Gemara lomeli misni hashtel yesh loyma. If one can't do without the other, kaim echad mehem lomeli. If you need the afora of both together, and one of them was mekayim, you can't do it. So the Gemara mal the same maidu ukeho akre. What he was making, he was oiker. Sheila's oiker. Is oikerit. That's the halacha. Sheila's chochem is oiker. Afar is mikan al bo. Sheila's chochem is oiker. Kamash malon the mefirim shneim basachas. Kamash malon the meifir shneim basachas. So here there's a major machloikis between the Rambam and the Rashba. The Ram goes with the Rashba. What is the pshat now? After we're learning he was shoyal on the akoma, so the akoma is not there anymore. So the question is, what's the kamashmon? The Ram learns the kamashmon is the meifim shneim ke'echod, that he has to be meifer again. He says, since that one was making, let's say the father was making, or the Baal was making, the father was meifer. So kivan dafor the chavre lev klumhu. Saying so chlemish kaim echad mehem hafor kamaisalav midihu. So he's telling us a chiddush that sulei chosi litztarufei. The chosi litztarufei lomen lemisla ein tzorch loim kepircha de gemara. V'ksharashma mai in the Rashba is a kasha, but the Ran Shita is that when there was a kiyum, one of the shutfim was Makayim, and one was Meifer. So the afora is can't have a tziruf. That afora can't have a tziruf. So Mamela, it's bottled. So after he's shoyl and azakoma, so they have to do it both together again. The Ran Shita is they're made for both together again, and he questions it. Why should they have to do it both together? The chorakoma is bottle mafreya. The shayla is mavatla mafreya. But kacha maybe we'll have time at the end of the year. We'll speak about it. But whatever it is, he says that if there's a point, there can be a tziruf. You made akoma, so it's bottled the hakvor kamaisal abidi, and therefore they have to both be made for over again. But the Rambam Shita is not like that. He learns that the Kamashmal of the Gemara is that since they have to be made for together, and one of them was already made for, so he can't be made for over again because ain't afora achafora. So the Ran is learning that even though his afora was bottled, he can make it over again and then unite with the other one that was shoyl on the hekim. But the Rambam Shita is not like that. Where's the Rambam? The Rambam is in Perikut Gimel Halacha Chof Aleph. Clear that the Rambam holds ein afora achafora. Hamaaorsa shenodra v'kaim lo avi l'vayla bay levada v'ofel lo echad v'ofel lo acher api shenishal chama v'hitaloi hakamosa ein achoyze meifel lo ma'acher. Rambam Shita is ein afora achafora. That's the Rambam Shita. So the Rashba in Daf Samach Zayin. What?
According to the Rambam, there's no hafara. Can't be made for the net.
Yeah, can be made for. It means that since the hafara was bottled, he can't use the power of hafara anymore. There's no tzir. So if the Rashba questions it. Kolosha Kasafti nearly doesn't agree with the Rambam. Kshani Shkafta nearly. Tana, in the Gemara this week, there's a Gemara later on in Samaches on the base. Shoma Baila v'Hofala lehispik ha'av l'shmoya at shemei sabal chayzer ha'av v'meifer chelka shabal. This chayzer ha'av v'meifer chelka shabal. The Alma Avagav the Aforas Habal Yotze B'Shor Shein Aruya, even though the Aforas Habal was Yotze B'Shor Shein Aruya, the Kivan Dol Hispek Av L'Shmoya L'Hofer B'Chay Habal Av B'Shofer Av B'Chelko Acham Yisabal Ein Klub. The Ba'in Shiur Rushneim B'Basachas L'Fichas Habal Shekodmo Ein Me'elis. V'Afilu Hochik Toni Chayzer Av Meifer Chelko Shabal. The Nesroik Neshus Habal Av. So we see that even though before the Aforas Habal was not a Hafora, so you see that the halacha is that Yesh Hafora Hafora. I'm going to go into where do we see this Gemara? This Gemara.
See the Hafora because that the Av could be made for again.
Right.
How could it be made for the Haforas Habal again? It's already an Hafora.
So here's the Gemara. Let's say the Gemara. It says over here, when do we say Meis Habal Nesroik L'Shuslav? This man that the Baal didn't hear it Kaidim Shomas. When can the Av take over the whole thing? Either when the Baal didn't hear it, Oisha Shoma, we'll go to Bach's Sugyos here. Oisha Shoma, Bach has a different Sugyos in the Gemara. Oisha Shoma v'hofer, Oisha Shoma v'hofer. Oisha Shoma v'shosek meis v'bayayim. She was Shoma v'shosek, but she died that day. She didn't completely have a shtik of a whole day.
It wasn't making.
There was a shtik of a whole day, then it would be different. Then it's a kiyum. Zui sheneinu meis haba'al Nesroik L'Shuslav. Then it can take over. Aval im Shoma v'kayim. The issue was Mekayim. Then she died. Shoma v'shosak, and she died the next day. Which shtika b'yom Shoma, that makes a kiyum, because she was shoik a whole day and she wasn't made for. That shows a kiyum. That constitutes a kiyum. Umeis b'yom shlachov ein yochel lahofer. Can't be made for. The Ran tells us what happens if it was hofer habal, and the Baal died the next day. So the Ran says, then Abad there'll be a din in Nesroikna. Abad be a din of a Nesroikna. He says, Im Shoma v'kayim, Shoma v'shosek, Meis b'yom shel achov, en yochel hofer. Im isa the Shoma v'hofer, Nami ki Meis b'yom shel achov, en yochel hofer, Lashminan hochi b'Shoma v'hofer. V'chi Meis b'yom shel achov, en yochel hofer, v'aribusa tvei. El Abad in middle Tony hochi, Shamet nenei, the Shoma v'hofer, afil Meis b'yom shel achov, the strike was shus la'av and motzi mefer, and he's ought to be mefer. So over here, the Baal made an afora, and the afora was bottled. So therefore, there's still a din in the strike. The Baal made an afora. He died the next day. There's no kiyum here, but he died. Now it can't be a tzir. Once he died, it's bottled the afora. It's bottled the afora. Now there's halachim the strike. Kind of the Rashba. How can there be a din of a strike? L'chayr, how can there be a din in the strike? Since the Baal was already mefer, he died. So he died. There can't be a tziruf with the Av. It's bottle is afora. It's not kayim. So therefore, how could there be a din of the strikener? Must be yesh afora achafora. That now that the Baal dies, I take over his koyach afora. So even though he died, but his bottle is koyach afora, so I can make over that afora.
That's different people.
What?
Not the same thing. It's a bigger finish if it's one person after yesh afora.
He's taking over. You're right.
It's not a bigger finish.
You're right. But if he's taking over the Baal's hafora, the Rashba understood. If he's taking over the Baal's hafora, he's taking over the koyach hafora of the Baal. The Baal has no koyach hafora anymore. If he's taking over the power of the Baal the Baal doesn't have a koyach hafara anymore. The Baal doesn't have that koyach. So therefore he brings a raya that the pshat is that yesh hafara hafara. That's what Ran brings a raya. Yesh hafara hafara.
Because he holds that the Av is being made for Bikoyach HaBaal.
Baal, right. So it can't be better than the Baal. The Baal couldn't make another hafara. Let's say for some reason the Baal's hafara was bottled, like the Gemara in Samaches. So if the Baal's hafara was bottled, so how does he make for over?
Like
well, what's to the Rambam? The Rambam halt doch nicht as the Rambam holds mefurish that ain't hafara hafara. Rambam. Teretz is the way we're speaking. It's very good. That the Rambam held the shitosoi that Nisroik is not that I'm taking over the koyach ha'oros. If I take over the koyach ha'oros, ain't hafara hafara. That is my rishus is expanding, so I'm going with my own koyach now. I'm like I was when she was a pnuya. So therefore, even though the hafara of the Baal was bottled, and the Rambam holds ein hafara hafara, but my rishus now expands, and I'm the whole balabas here. She's entirely in my rishus. So therefore, I can be mefer, even though regardless that the Baal's hafara was bottled, and the Baal has no koyach hafara anymore because ein hafara hafara, I'm being mefer with my own koyach. His rishus is expanding. Now I have the same din as before. So we see that's the Rambam Shita. I wanted to bring another raya that the Rambam Shita in Nisroikna is that I'm taking over, not that I'm taking over from the Oros. The Oros is koyach. No, rather when the Oros, in the absence of the Oros that he died, my rishus expands. There's another raya in the Gemara here, and Dafayin. That is Dafayin Aleph. Yes, we deal with a strike now. Naira Merosa Vio Baila Mefirna Doreh. Price that you learned this week. Steht Keitzat Shoma Vio B'Hofala Lehitzpik Habal L'Shmoya Achemeis V'Nisar Saboy Bayoim V'Fila Me'apom Vio Baila Achim Mefirna Doreh. Bryce goes further. Shoma Baila B'Hofala. The Baal heard and he was Mefer. V'Lehitzpik Ha'av L'Shmoya Achemeis Habal. Choyzer Av u'Mefer Chelka Shabal. So the Av can be Choyzer and Mefer Chelka Shabal. So Ran says Pshat over here. Shoma Baila B'Hofala. So the Ran Choyzer Av and Mefer Chelka Shabal. The Av L'Chudei Motzi Mefer. Aval Pish and the Sar Salacha can Mefarish Taima L'Kamon. V'Chitoni Mefer Chelka Shabal Einach Hanami. The Chaylik Atzmai Gam Ken Yofa. That's Basch. So it's Shulchan Lashmin. Nusif Shito, Shel Chelkoi, that his chelik he could do. The Chelko Shabal, who the Yitzchak Lashmin, and the Afal Gav, the Baal Kva Hofer Chelkoi, Afilu Hochi, Choyzer Av, Mefer, Af Oysa Chelik Atzme Shabal, Vichum Shlichim Mayas Le Baal, Botla Afora Delay. When the Baal died, it was Botla Afora Delay. It was Botla that Afora. So Ran is saying over here that in this case, of Shama Baila v'Hofala v'Leis B'Gav L'Shmoya Shemei Sabal Choyzer Av Mefer Chelka Shabal. Choyzer Mefer Afoy Sechelek Atzme Shabal Mishum Dechim Mayis LeBaal Botla Afora Delay. It was Botla Afora Delay. It's Botla Afora Delay. There's a problem over here that the Choyer Shteito that the halacha is that Shoma Baila B'Hofala v'Leyispek Av L'Shmoya Achemeis Habal is Choyzer Mefer Chelka Shabal. He's Choyzer Mefer Chelka Shabal. That Avada, that his chelik he could Avada do. Avada can be Mefer, but he can be Mefer the Chelka Shabal. But there's a little problem over here. Because we see Bait in the Ran, not mashma over here. It's not mashma that Dafka was made on the same day as the Av. So the Ran is saying in Kol Mokim, he can go ahead and do over the Afora of the Baal. Afal Gab the Baal Kva Hofer Chelkoi. Afilu Hochi Choyzer Av. Af Oysa Chelik Atzmei Shel Baal Mishum L'Chimei Baal Botle Afora. So when the Baal died, it was Botle's Afora. So the Av could do over that chelik. The Av could do over that chelik. Of course, he can be made for what he was missing, but he can even do the chelik habal. But there's a problem over here. It's mashma in the hemshich HaRav that l'chorah they didn't have a same Yom Shomai. It's mashma that, and in the Ram it goes weiter. Let's say the Baal was made for on Sunday, and then the Baal died the next day. Baal died even the next day. So the halacha is that he can be made for the chelka, his chelik, and the chelik Shabbat. That's good, like the Rishonim that hold, and I think that's the Ran Shita, that why, if the Oris died after Yom Shammai, why if the Oris died after Yom Shammai, so then I cannot take over from the Baal. Why can't I take over from the Baal? I cannot take over from the Baal if the Oris died by Yom Shammai. There I could, forget. If he died after the Yom Shammai, there I can't take over, because that constitutes Akom. It means if the Baal went a full day without being Meifa, and then he died the next day, there was an Akom. So then there won't be a case in this right. But remember what happens if he died the same day, then he could. What happens if he was Meifa and he died the next day? What happens if he was Meifa and died the next day? Can then there be a din in a strike? That's also brought out Claw in the Bryce. Yeah, he was made for, the Baal was made for on Sunday. It was nifter on Monday. Would there be a din in a strike?
The Rambam was conflicting.
So 1 second. So he says, the Rambam says, of course he could be made. It's not worse off. It's not any worse than over here. You can't say it's just like he died in the middle of the first day. There was no shtika b'yom shomai. Shtika b'yom shomai is a whole day went by and he wasn't Mefer. That shows a kiyum. But over here he was Mefer. He was Goli Adaita. He's not maskim to the nether. No, what happened? He died the next day. So he died the next day. It was Botlas Koyach Hafora. It was Botlas Koyach Hafora. So on that the halacha is that I could take over Zafora. I can take over because the Baal never was Makayim. So now the Av can go ahead because the Ran holds there's no Chson Vein Hafora Hafora. He can go ahead and do both chalot. But in the Rambam we have a problem because the new sheet is a Rambam. The Rambam sheet is that they have to have the same Yom Shomai. If the Baal hears Sunday and the Av hears Monday, they can no shittas. That means the Av has to have the same Yom Shomai as the Baal. So we're stuck here in the Gemara. They have to have the same Yom Shomai. So why does it help? We help this. They have to have the same Yom Shomai. So we're saying it's very good. It's not haraya. Again, what's the problem over here? It says that the halacha is if the Baal made Afor on Sunday and he died on Monday. So the halacha is there's a din in Israel. Zoktaran, why? Because over here, the only reason why if the Baal died on Monday and he didn't make an Afora, that he can't do it, there's no din Israel because the Baal was already Makayim the Neder. Once he's Makayim the Neder, so you can't be made for it. There's no din Israel. But if he died, he was made a Mefer on Sunday, and he died on Monday, then there is a din Israel because even though he died the next day, and the father first heard about it the next day, so what's the problem? I take over the Baal Zafora. The Baal was never making, but according to Rambam, they have to have the same Yom Shomai. Teretz is another raya. That the Rambam holds, I'm not taking over the koyach. I'm not taking over the koyach of the Oris. If I was taking over the koyach, I'm taking over the koyach of the Oris. So the Oris and the father have to have the same Yom Shomai. I'm not going. I'm going back to where she was when she's a Pnuya. I'm going on my own independently because my rishus expanded. That's the pshat. So we have three rayas that the Rambam held. The Rambam sheet and going back to the Machlokes, the major Machlokes, the Rambam and the Rabbeinu Yechiel, that the Rambam sheet is that even though when Shas Erusin he could only do Beina Lebeina and Inu Nefesh because he has a shutif, but if the Oris dies, he could do everything. He was not taking over the Koyach the Oris. His own rishus expands. Therefore, his rishus that he can be made for everything. But the Rabbeinu Yechiel held not like that. He held the Rabbeinu Yechiel that he only takes over the Koyach the Oris, or only takes over the Koyach of Beina Lebeina.
What happened with Rabbeinu Yechiel?
What? According to Rabbeinu Yechiel?
No, in that case, when he died the next day, I don't know if Rabbeinu Yechiel holds like the Rambam.
No, you'd have to know if he holds like the Rambam.
If he holds like the Rambam, it has to be the same day.
Holds like the Rambam has to be the same day.
In a Chanami. If he holds like that, then it can't be good.
What's your kasha? In which case? Chiyuv,
But
right.
doesn't take it over. He wasn't maker. The Baal was maker. The father wasn't maker.
And the Baal died
The
the
Baal
next day.
died after the Apara.
Right, and now it's the next day. When you're bringing a deal, what can be done?
Ein Chanami,
According to
he
Rabbeinu
can't.
Chil, depends if he holds Yesh Afara Chafara, Ein Afara Chafara.
Right.
And why? So what's Rabbeinu Chil any different? Maybe he learned the Sroikna is, the Rabbeinu Chil is learning the Sroikna as he takes over the Koyach of the Oris.
So he can't
So
do
on
it
the
anymore.
Sharnadorim he can't do, but Beina Lebeino he could do. The Sharnadorim he can't do, but Beina Lebeino he could do. I want to say one more Zach. It's a little difficult, I don't know. I want to say maybe a shtickle Yipshu on the Rajba. It's Kasha. What we had before, if I may, is the Gemara says that why did the Mishnah have to say Hofer Abeloi Hofer Abal? Zayin Mufa. Vein Sochlam Mishkai Mechlem. What's the Chiddush? Gemara says, let's say Shiur and a Zakoma. The Shiur is on a comma, so then the halacha is that I still can. The Ran holds I can be made for over again, and the Rambam holds I can't because Ein Afara Chafara. That's the Yesh Afara. So the Shaila is, what does that have to do with Yesh Afara Chafara, Ein Afara Chafara? But Emerson, the Rajba really refers to that kasha. He brings the Gemara in Kedushin. You're learning in the Dorm. There's a basic nafkamina between Afara and Atorah. Afara is Mikan al-Abor. Sheila is L'mafreya. As a matter of fact, you have to have, when your Chochem is Mata Neder, you have to give him a Pesach. Had I known this and this, I wouldn't have made the Neder. So, he's Oikel L'mafreya. So, if he's Oikel L'mafreya, so what's the problem that there was Akom and you Sheil on the Akom? If you Sheil, it's bottled the Akom L'mafreya. That's Be'emes the Rajmas Kasher. He says, you see such a din, Agudah Almanas, Agudah Almanas, Shein Ala Nedorim. And the Isha has Nedorim, and later on she Sheila Nedorim, the Kedushin is Chal. Even though B'shas the Kedushin she had Nedorim, but Sheila is Oikel Mafreya. So that's what they ask over here. So I want to say it's a pshat here. So you do that there's a Rosh, that we know Davar Sheyesh Lamatirim is not bottled. There's no bittul by Davar Sheyesh Lamatirim. Because since Sheyesh Lamatirim, there's no din of bittul. So Ran says Neder is called the Davar Sheyesh Lamatirim. This is the Ram in the sixth parak, I think. It's called the Davar Sheyesh Lamatirim. Why? Because the Chacham can be matir. Now the Chayra, if you learn that the pshat is the Chacham is matir, there was a mistake, it was a Neder B'toyis, that's not pshat, it's a Davar Sheyesh Lamatirim. It never was a Neder. Why is that called Davar Sheyesh Lamatirim? It was never a Neder. Va'apol pi sha'ikra mikorei, so Rosh Pavon the Kasha, mikol makom ha'yosar ha'yoim, hilka choshev davar sheyesh l'matirim. Even though he says clearly, Omre ein oikra el mekan al-bo, kalem ikra mekan al-bo she'yosar ha'ata, va'apol pi sha'ikra mikorei. So mikorei means from before. So it's called davar sheyesh l'matirim. So I want to introduce you to a concept, maybe some of you know it. There's a concept of Mikan al-Abol Mafreya. That means, Mikan al-Abol means, Mafreya means, Reb Chaim Betzim brings this Yisoid, that Mikan al-Abol would done it like it never existed. And Reb Chaim says that, L'gabi Kedusha Miyun. Because L'gabi Kedusha Miyun is that she has no father to marry you off, so brothers marry you off, it's only a Kedusha D'Rabbanan. So the halacha is she's married, but after the Mamayan, she's mutter in all the kravis. Why? Because the miyan is oikel mafreya. Because the miyan takes off the kedusha mafreya. So why doesn't she have to return the? Why doesn't the Baal have to return the ma'aseh yadayim? While they were married, he kept all the checks that she had that she was working. He kept it. Why doesn't he have to give it back? So Reb Chaim, it's mikan al-bol mafreya. Mikan al-bol, we judge her that she was never married to that person. Therefore, it's mutter to the kravis. Or at the time they were married. So there's a concept of Mikan al-Abol Mafreya. And Emerson, Reb Shimon uses this concept to understand, to answer Reb Kvege's kasha. Reb Kvege is a kasha, that the Tosfos says a kasha, how can you give a Noza Malkis, Sasor Sofik? Maybe you'll be shoyal on his Nazir. He's going to tell me you're going to drink wine, you're going to get Malkis. Maybe you'll be shoyal. So Tosfos says the Cheskas, it's Becheskas right now. It's Becheskas that she's a Noza. Reb Kvege is better. Now, how do you give Malchus? Maybe you'll be shoyal. Maybe you'll be shoyal. How can you give Malchus if somebody's over in a Zirus or a Neder? Maybe you'll be shoyal. So Reb Shimon, the big nechilek. Once you gave Malkus, Sheila only tuzo if it's oikel mafreya. That means Mekanal Abo would done it like it's not here. I once had a chavrusa, he's not living anymore, he's a Shiva in Oral Chonon, Rabbi Avraham Farbstein's son. I learned in Lakewood, he came from Chevron there many, many years ago. So he gave me an example of what it means Mekanal Abo mafreya. He's like, a hand would go into the past and take it out. A hand would go into the past and take it out. So the Maisa at the time, they were married. So you keep the Maisa Yadayim, even afterwards. What's Negea? Yesterday's dinim, she was married. Mekanal Abo were done that she was never married. So Mekanal Abo, you put in the koif. But at the time when he got the checks, it was good. So I was thinking that's the pshat over here in the answer of Kvegas Kashu. When I gave him the Malkus, we're still a Nazir. When you shoyl, it uproots it. You're taking out the root l'mafreya. But at the time, the Malkus was a legitimate Malkus. L'chor daf mizog, and I think Reb Shimon says that to answer Reb Kvegas Kashu. So then it's a little more understandable over here. If when he made the Afora, there was Akoma, even though later you shoyl on the Akoma, but when the Akoma was there. It's Nekar. It's Nekar. It's not Igloyim Milsa Afreya was never there. It's not an Igloyim Milsa Afreya was never there. It was Nekar. There was, it means an akira. Something came and uprooted it, but it was there. So therefore, the afora was bottled. If it would be a glory milsam afraid it was not a comma, then the Rashba has a good kasha. So glory milsam afraid a comma was a mistake. It was a toyis. Not pshat when a chacham is oik is a neder b'toyis. Even though you need a pesach, it just means that it can be oik in a neder. And that's the lashon harosh. That mikana bots neka mikorah. He's not coming korah. That's the concept of Mekanal Abo mafreya. With that, we can understand over here the Gemara why the Afar is bottled, because at the time the Akoma existed, it's only Nekal mafreya. But that's a Klor Zach, a Chacham Azoikel mafreya. Just want to end off with one Zach. Parsha. Let's say over from the Nice Desha, Slavne Neza. Yes, an interesting question. Yes, why was the Bechorah given to Yosef? This week he got the Bechorah, he got Shechem, he got two Shvatim, Ephraim and Menashe. The Bechorah was understandable. Reuven lost the Bechorah because, like it says in Rashi, Pachas Kamayim, he switched the beds, and in a rush he took it out. He wanted to put it in the tent from Leah, take it out of the tent of the Shifcha. But good, so Reuven lost the Bechorah. But why did Yosef have the Bechorah? Let them all be equal. So he brings from the Maharal, the Maharal says, what is the concept of a Bechorah? A Bechorah is the pshat that he has no tziruf. He has nobody else to look up to. He's alone, he's born. He has no older brothers to lead the pair. That's a Bechorah. Bechorah is a pshat, he has no tziruf. Nobody, no combination. He's alone. He says that Bechorah is leadership. He says that Reuven lost the Bechorah Pachas Kamayim also because he had no leadership. There's a Tyson Saita that Reuven, even though he did tshuva, or in the Mechiras Yosef, but he only did tshuva, you have to know it shtims, he only did it because he saw Yehuda being Moida Ato by Tamar, Tzot Kimimeni. He didn't do it on his own. He copied it from Yehuda. He learned it from Yehuda. So therefore he didn't have that leadership quality. That's what he says. And Mamela, but good, why was Yosef Bechor? Because Yosef showed that he could be alone. He was alone in Mitzrayim without the whole mishpacha, and he was able to keep his ganze Yiddishkeit, like it says in last week's Shedra, when he saw the Agolis, which was a simon of the Egla Arufa. That was the last sugya that they learned 22 years ago, and he still remembered it. So we see there was no shitri, it was mekusha. So then Tachiruch Yankiv, you see that Yosef was on the same level as when he left him. So the Amnei says on Moira de Kazach. It says this week. And also I'm going to preface the Welt. You know, there's a famous, I think it's the Targum Yonis Ben Uzil, that you give a blessing to the child, B'Yom de Behulta, Yisimcha L'Kim Kafraim Menashe. Also, it's by the Bris Milah, you give him that, Yisimcha L'Kim Kafraim Menashe. Give him that bracha. It says in the Pasuk this week, V'ato Shnei B'necha, Hanoid Lodem L'cho, Kerem Boye L'cho. V'ato Shnei B'necha, Hanoid Lodem L'cho, Be'eret Mitzrayim, Ad Boye L'cho Mitzrayim. The two children that were born before Yaakov came with the Mishpacha. Liheim, they're going to be Shiftei Kol. Ephraim, Menashe, Keruv, Meshib, and Yehuda. The ones that were born afterwards, they're not going to be shvatim. They're not going to be shvatim. What's Epis? Ephraim and Menashe and them manifested the Bechor. Because Ephraim and Menashe was also alone, without the whole Sliva. They weren't in like a Brooklyn or a Lakewood and a Muncie, they were mamish alone. And they were able to keep that Yiddishkeit. So there were manifestations of the Abneineza, of the Bechorah, of Yosef. That was manifested in Ephraim and Menashe because they were born Terem before we arrived with the Mishpacha. And that we see the Bechorah that was able to stand alone. It doesn't say that there's a big Yisoid that revolves around all the Sedras, that the Koyach of Yaakov Avinu, and could be that's also why he was the Bechorah, because he had the Midah of his father. Yaakov's Midah was Levadoi. It says when he was wrestling with the Sar Shel Esav, in Parshas Vayishlach, steht, Vayivose Yankov Levadoi, Vayovek Yishimoi, V'lo Yocholoi. So it says that Yivose Yaakov Levadoi, Poshut, you learn he was vulnerable because he remained alone when he went down for the Pachim Tanim. And then the Sar Shel Esav wrestled with him, V'lo Yocholoi. Rashi, the Spurna says, why Lo Yocholoi? Because Rav de Kusei Bo Yisborach. Because Rav de Kusei Bo Yisborach. You say the Dovik in Torah, Dovik in Hashem. When you Dovik say in Torah, the time the Lord says, Yitzchak Neinoid Movadoi, nothing can happen to you. You Dovik in Hashem, nothing can happen to you. So Lo Yocholoi. Zok the Mira Mashgiach, Zosanit Gelant Chumash. It's not the Pshat because he was left alone, that's why he was vulnerable, and the Sar Shel Esav started off. That's how he's Menatzeach the Sar Shel Esav. He says there's a Midah HaKadosh Baruch Hu Levadoi. That means Shteit V'nizgav Hashem Levadoi. Adonai Elohim Hashem Molech B'terem Kol Yitzir Nivrod. The Eibush is a Melech before there's an Am. Usually without an Am there's no king. Ein Melech V'loyam. The Eibush is Bechefza Melech. V'achrei Kichol Yisakoel Hu Levadoi Yimkot. Even everything has the shut. Because the Eibush is a Chefza of a Melech. He has that Midah Levadoi. He doesn't need his totally independent. Now, Vada, we can't have the Kavayochel's independence. But he was Balach Bedrochav to go with that Midah of Levada, to be able to stand on his own. And that's the koyach that Yaakov Avinu gave to all the Deiris of Klal Yisrael, that they should be able to be independent, not become assimilated with the Goyim. Hein am levodod, uba Goyim letischashuv. Hein am levodod, give that koyach. And that koyach was given over, we see to Yosef HaTzadik. That Yosef HaTzadik had that midah of Levadoi, that Mitzrayim, without a Tzvi, without a Mishpacha, to withstand the Tumas Mitzrayim, the Snusim Mitzrayim, the Avodah Zorah Mitzrayim, that he was able to be Levadoi. He was able because he was Dovek Hashem, Vayehi Hashem Im Yosef. The Eibush was with Yosef the whole time, so he had that midah of Levadoi. Just wanted to include. The Netziv says that, and that really has to be the Ashkofa of a Yid. Said in last week's parasha, he's afraid of going down to Mitzrayim. He's afraid of assimilation. That Gevus was Tutzach do. So the Eibush told him, Al Tiro Medor Mitzrayim, don't be afraid. I'll go down with you. The Eibush is with us and goes, I'll go over with you. Yosef Yoshes Yodei Alei Necho. Interesting pasuk. Yosef will place his hands on your eyes. What does that mean? Yosef will place his hands on your eyes. Zok Alei Necho means the ashkof of a person, the cook. Steht in Zois HaBrocha, Ein Yankov. The cook of Yankov is Yosef Betach Bodet. Ein Yankov. Zok the Tzvi. The Yosef is going to protect. You're afraid of going down to Mitzrayim, you'll get assimilated. Yosef Yoshes Yodel Anecha. He'll watch over the Ein Yankov that you should be able to be separate. And that's taka what happened. Yosef separated a separate Mokim in Goshen, where they made a Beis HaTalmud Lo. So he was able to protect Yaakov Avinu with that midah of Levadai. That's the midah of Levadai that the Ovish tells Avech for us. We're going away from Sefer Bereshis, the Sefer of the Ovis. We're going into Maisa, to Maisa Bonim, Simon Ovis, Maisa Ovis, Simon Bonim. It's interesting. The Maral says the only Yosef's Tira is mentioned at the end of the Sedra, and he's the only one mentioned again in Shmos. Because Yosef had the distinct of being an Av and a Shevet. They call him Even Yisrael Avu Ben, Rashi says. Because really he wasn't a Shevet. Because Ephraim Menashe was a Shevet. But he wasn't an Av either, it was like in between. The Footnote used to say he was the bridge between the Ovis and the Shvatim. That's we're going into the Ma'aseh similar bonin, and we shall have a good tavoch and a matzliach dikavoch, and we should have to go b'derech Yaakov Avinu levadim.